Maggie Greene is not born into violence. She is cultivated in peace. Raised on Herschel's farm, surrounded by open fields, quiet mornings, and moral structure, Maggie begins her story as someone who believes in order, family, and human decency. Her early personality is grounded, emotionally intelligent, and compassionate. She is strong, but not hardened. At this stage, Maggie represents what humanity used to be before the collapse: hopeful, principled, and emotionally open. But the apocalypse does not allow softness to survive untouched. Her transformation begins slowly, almost invisibly. The first crack appears when walkers invade the farm. Home is no longer sacred. Safety becomes temporary. Maggie learns that permanence is an illusion. Psychologically, this moment plants the seed of hypervigilance, the belief that stability can vanish without warning. From here on, Maggie's nervous system never truly relaxes again. Then comes Glenn. Glenn is not just a partner, he becomes Maggie's emotional anchor. With him, she allows herself vulnerability in a world that punishes it. Glenn represents innocence, humor, and gentleness, everything the apocalypse tries to erase. Through Glenn, Maggie reconnects with intimacy and hope. Their relationship is not merely romantic, it is existential. Glenn becomes proof that love can still exist in hell, which makes his death catastrophic. Negan does not just kill Glenn, he destroys Maggie's internal world. Witnessing Glenn's brutal execution while pregnant fractures Maggie at a neurological level. This is not ordinary grief. It is traumatic bereavement combined with helplessness and horror. She is forced to watch the person she loves be slowly destroyed while powerless to intervene. This creates a psychological condition similar to prolonged trauma exposure. Her brain permanently associates vulnerability with fatal consequences. From this moment forward, Maggie no longer experiences emotion the same way. Her grief does not express itself through tears or collapse. Instead, it crystallizes into rage, control, and emotional withdrawal. Maggie becomes quiet, calculated. Her pain hardens into something cold and precise. She begins to operate from survival mode rather than emotional presence. The world narrows into objectives: protect the baby, kill Negan, stay alive. She stops dreaming. She starts enduring. Motherhood intensifies this transformation. Herschel becomes her sole emotional priority. Everything else becomes expendable. Maggie develops what psychologists call protective dissociation, suppressing her own emotional needs in favor of hyper-focus on her child's survival. She is no longer living for herself. She is living to ensure that part of Glenn survives through their son. Leadership emerges from this trauma. Maggie doesn't seek power. Power seeks her because she radiates authority forged by suffering. Unlike Rick, whose leadership is fueled by moral struggle, Maggie's leadership comes from emotional exhaustion. She has already lost everything. This makes her fearless. She is willing to make brutal decisions because she has already paid the ultimate price. But her leadership is colder. She learns to sacrifice people for strategy. She accepts casualties. She begins to view communities as resources. This is not cruelty, it is trauma logic. Maggie has learned that attachment leads to devastation. Emotional distance becomes her armor. Yet beneath this hardened exterior, Maggie remains deeply fractured. Negan becomes her psychological shadow. Even after sparing his life, Maggie is unable to release him from her mind. He represents unfinished trauma, unresolved rage, moral ambiguity. Killing Negan would not heal her, but sparing him forces her to carry the wound forever. She exists in a state of unresolved grief, where closure never arrives. This is why Maggie leaves. Her departure is not abandonment. It is psychological survival. Staying near Negan keeps her nervous system in a constant trauma loop. She must physically remove herself to avoid being consumed by revenge or emotional collapse. Distance becomes therapy. When she returns years later, Maggie is different. She is leaner emotionally, quieter, more severe. The warmth is gone. Her eyes carry a permanent heaviness. She has become someone who expects loss, someone who prepares for betrayal, someone who trusts slowly and loves cautiously. The apocalypse has reshaped her emotional architecture. Her relationship with Negan becomes one of the most complex psychological dynamics in the series. She despises him. She needs him. She understands him. This cognitive dissonance eats at her. Negan forces Maggie to confront the uncomfortable truth that monsters can change. But forgiveness does not automatically follow transformation. Maggie represents the reality of trauma. Healing does not mean forgetting. Growth does not erase damage. She cannot forgive Negan because forgiveness would feel like betraying Glenn. So she carries her pain instead. This makes Maggie one of the most psychologically realistic characters in The Walking Dead. She does not move on. She adapts around the wound. She learns to function while bleeding internally. Her emotional strength is not heroic. It is survival-based. Maggie becomes the embodiment of post-traumatic leadership, resilient, strategic, emotionally restrained, morally conflicted. She protects others while quietly breaking herself. She leads communities while carrying ghosts. She raises a child while grieving a future that never happened. She is not a symbol of hope. She is a symbol of endurance. Maggie Greene is what happens when love survives trauma, but innocence does not. She walks forward, not because she believes in tomorrow, but because stopping means drowning in yesterday. And that is her true tragedy.